Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to this webinar, which has been convened to look at the issue of ghost plates. The full title for the webinar is Unmasking Invisible Lawbreakers on UK Roads. My name's James Larkhurst from Project Edward. Just to let you know that the webinar is being recorded and you'll have access to a copy to watch it at any point afterwards, so please do that. It'll probably last around an hour. It won't last any more. We may sort of finish a little early. And if you want to make any comment or question, please use the chat function. We'll monitor that as we go along. We're going to start shortly with a little video where we will hear from Sarah Coombs, MP for West Bromwich, and Simon Foster, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner for the West Midlands. So we'll crack on. Ghost plates pose a growing threat to road safety and the integrity of law enforcement systems across the UK. These plates are designed to evade automatic number plate recognition systems, allowing criminals and reckless drivers to escape detection, fines, and accountability. The All-Party Parliamentary Group for Transport Safety's new report, which was published just a few days ago, warns that ghost and other illegal number plates are now a serious road safety and national security problem, and calls for a fundamental overhaul of the UK's number plate system. So what I'm now going to do is to play this video. Excuse me being a little bit cumbersome with it. So please just someone give me a thumbs up that you can hear it. I'm going to start it now, and you should hear it fine.
I'm Sarah Coombs, the MP for West Bromwich, and I have a big car racing problem in my constituency. Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, we might get 40 or 50 cars come in the middle of the night. They race up and down. It's unbelievably loud. It's very dangerous. People have died in my constituency from this kind of racing before. And I was banging on to the local police about how we need a speed camera on some of the affected roads. And the police said to me in about January of this year, Sarah, there's no point getting speed camera because all these races have got ghost plates. And that was the first I had ever heard of ghost plates. And it has now opened a whole treasure trove of things that I now realize that we urgently need to address as policymakers and as politicians, which is why I'm very grateful to be invited to speak today and why I've been working so hard to try and achieve some change in this space. We have done a big report released this week all about number plates and the kind of crisis in regulation and also therefore road safety. So the report found that there are very serious problems with the way that we sell number plates in Britain and regulate number plates. It's leading to criminals doing what they want undetected, and it's also leading to dangerous drivers getting off the hook. And the key things that were looked at were ghost number plates, so number plates which look normal to the human eye but are reflective somehow, so can't show up on infrared police cameras and speed cameras. And we also looked at the issue of cloned number plates where someone's number plate was copied. And I think both of these two things are very serious problems because they enable criminals, they enable really dangerous driving and getting away with it, and they are subverting a major kind of state enforcement tool, which is automatic number plate recognition cameras. And they are symptoms of a bigger problem, which is the way we regulate number plates in Britain is completely broken. It's far too easy in this country to set yourself up as a number plate supplier. It's crazy, in my view, that the law has not changed since the register of number plate suppliers was set up 20 years ago. All you have to do to become a registered number plate supplier is pay £40 one-off fee to the DVLA, provide them with very little information and no background checks at all. So one of the things that investigation found was that people with very serious criminal convictions for things like fraud, attempted murder, sexual offences have come out of prison and set themselves up as number plate sellers and not complied with the law at all. So they are selling cloned number plates, e.g. they are selling plates with any registration to anyone that asks about proving ownership. They're selling ghost number plates, which are invisible to ANPR cameras. And there's very, very little enforcement in the current regime. So the DVLA says it aims to check people every few years. But the reality is, I think the DVLA has only checked about 4,000 of the 34,000 registered companies in recent years. And the DVLA themselves found that 31% of the companies were not complying with the law. That's a very big problem, clearly. And if we think the number plates have a role in British society, which I think they do, they're a passport for a vehicle. As far as I know, no country around the world has stopped using number plates. We have got to do something to make the system of number plates in this country more secure. And that's what the report had some recommendations on. So the big opportunity in Parliament to do something about this whole policy space is the road safety strategy. The government is doing the first road safety strategy for 10 years. It's supposed to be coming out soon. I and other MPs have been lobbying very hard for a few different things. One is to change the way we regulate number plates. So the key thing I'm saying is we need a much higher bar to become a registered number plate supplier, and we need background checks. Two, we need higher fees, because £40 fee is just minimal, really. So I think we do need higher fees, and I think we need annual registration fees to ensure that the list is up to date and you don't just have legacy businesses on there, which makes it very, very hard for the DVLA to check all of them. So it's about enforcing space properly and making sure we have good sellers. I also think that we need to be cracking down on people who are using ghost number plates. So in my view, the current fine of £100, which is the most common penalty, is far too low. I think we need to have higher fines, and I think we need to make it endorsable, which means have points on your license. The government has said warm words towards that. I'm hopeful that we will get that in the road safety strategy, but we will see in the coming weeks and months whether that's the case. The West Midlands Police have really led the way on tackling and raising awareness of the issue of ghost plates, but it is clearly an issue right across the country. I've spoken to Met Police, who say there are copious, enormous quantities of these plates on the road, North Yorkshire Police, police in the Manchester area. So I think the more that we can do to share information across forces and educate officers. I did an enforcement activity with officers. We found a ghost plate on the first vehicle we stopped in the summer. It was astonishing. Obviously, there are new cameras which are able to detect ghost plates. The problem is, obviously, it would be very expensive to upgrade the entire police camera fleet. But over time, I think that needs to be the aim, that we need to be making the most of the modern technology available to us. But at the moment, I think those are the two key things that we could do between us, which is what are the technological solutions, and can we get them when the time is right, and B, just raise awareness among the people that need to know about these problem plates.
I'm pleased to be able to contribute to this important discussion on ghost plates, albeit not in person because of a pre-existing commitment, and my apologies for that. My police and crime plan includes a commitment to clamping down on and targeting illegal number plates, and that includes ghost plates. That's because they undermine the operational effectiveness of ANPR systems, and that can mean criminal activity ranging from speeding to serious organised crime being less capable of being detected, disrupted and enforced against by policing. We need to understand the scale of the issue in the West Midlands, and that's why we partnered with Redspeed International, and as a consequence of that innovative collaboration, over a 6-week period at one location in Birmingham, there were 8,403 reads of ghost plates on 1,884 vehicles. As a consequence of our campaign, we now have the all-party parliamentary group reporting on illegal vehicle registration plates, a consultation by the British Standards Institute on the banning of 3D and 4D plates, and I understand it's likely the government's new road strategy will address the matter as well. Together with Sarah Coombs MP, we held a very successful parliamentary drop-in session last week. We're calling for a ban on 3D and 4D plates, an increase in the £100 fine to £1,000, 6 penalty points, tighter regulation of number plate suppliers, and single marketplace for registered keepers to purchase plates. Thank you to everyone for all the work you're doing to tackle illegal ghost plates. I look forward to working with all of you in the future.
I'm back with you, and I'm very pleased to welcome members of our panel to discuss this important issue. Let's meet them first of all. So I'm going to hand over to Tom Duckham, say a few words about your role in this topic.
Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. I'm the Chief Executive here at Redspeed, and I am delighted to be part of this important discussion. My career in safety camera space now spans 4 decades, and it was right at the beginning, in my first year, back in 1993, that I first encountered the challenge of what we now call ghost plates. In those days, enforcement relied on wet film Gatso cameras. A police operator would load a 30-metre roll of celluloid, let it capture for about 3 days, then process and view the resulting images. Occasionally, a difficult or seemingly impossible to read license plate would appear. And I was a fresh-faced engineer learning the trade, and the ingenuity of the police officers I worked with truly fascinated me. They had a host of clever tricks and techniques to identify obscured or illegible plates, and I was in awe of the lengths they would go to in order to ensure identification. Unfortunately, back then, the incidents of illegible plates were rare, allowing the teams the necessary time to follow up on each case individually. That memory has stayed with me, but now, with the proliferation of vehicle ID being essential for applications far beyond speed enforcement, such as ULEZ, congestion charging, smart parking, we are seeing a much more concerted effort to evade detection. This is why, since starting at Redspeed, I've ensured that the issue of ghost plates is central to our camera development. It is becoming an increasingly urgent issue to address, and I'm therefore very grateful forums like this are taking place to raise the profile of this challenge so that collectively we can develop effective solutions.
Thanks, Tom. Let's meet Rob from the British Numberplate Manufacturers Association. Hello, Rob.
Morning, everyone. Morning. Thanks for having me. As introduced, Rob Laugharne. I'm the chair of the British Numberplate Manufacturers Association, as well as having a day job as the managing director of U Group UK, which operates two of the largest manufacturers of all things number plates here in the UK and elsewhere in the world. So, having been a lawyer for many years, I decided to get a proper job 8 or 9 years ago and join industry. And I thought I was joining an important industry, but a fairly stable one and a fairly well-regulated, well-policed one. And the reality hit home fairly quickly of, unfortunately, it's anything but. And echoing kind of Tom's comments there, of even in my short 8 or 9 year tenure in the industry, I think there's been an explosion of plate abuse. It's been around for decades, but it took different forms. I think with the reliance now of remote ANPR policing and controlling all things, as Tom says, like ULEZ zones and car parking and things, it's encouraging more and more creative ways of avoiding detection. And unfortunately, it is such a crucial part of UK PLC and our infrastructure that, obviously, being a manufacturer of such product, my real concern is whenever that integrity of that product comes into question, and it's a problem for all of us. So I've been lobbying for a number of years. Some of the solutions and problems we will talk about today have been around for a little while. And I'm hopeful, again, with forums like this and a momentum gain with the APPG recently, that we should hopefully start to see some change. But we've, as Sarah says, the system is quite broken at the moment. So I'm looking forward to being hopefully part of the solution to fix it.
Thanks, Rob. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself for us, please?
Yes, good morning. Spence Marsh. I work for National Trading Standards. We have an intelligence team with NTS. Not trading standards, totally separate. We are a sub-department of the Department of Business and Trade. I'm a retired police officer. I did my 30 years as a law enforcement, mostly in the detective world and surveillance world. 23 years on various surveillance teams in various organizations, mostly looking at organized crime, and also part of a counterterrorism intelligence team as well for my last part of my career. I've been with NTS for 8 years now, and like I said, our role is to gather intel and to try and network and to try and join different agencies to talk to each other. Trading Standards is a very locally focused entity. Each individual council has a trading standards department, but like I said, they look at their local issues. NTS is trying to get different trading standards teams to talk to each other. And also, we're very aware how we cross-cut into serious organised crime now. If you think about what's happening on the high street with illegal vapes, illegal tobacco, most of the trading standards officers that are coming into contact with counterfeit people, counterfeit organisations are cross-cutting into organised crime. That's how I got into this. So I had some officers from Rochdale said they were looking at a high-end counterfeiter who was physically moving goods around the country, and they were really struggling to track the vehicles that they knew that this group were using. Couldn't understand why the vehicles weren't popping up on ANPR, and that's how they discovered the ghost plate issue. Raised it with me to see if it needed to be looked at nationally, because was it just Rochdale that was having this problem, or was it further afield? And that's how I got into it. From my crime background, I saw the immediate and obvious conclusions about the impacts that criminals using ghost plates would have on investigations, on prosecutions, on intelligence gathering. and then it's spread from there really. And I've sort of thrown myself into it because it piqued my interest, to be honest. It's been an interesting journey. There's been a lot of pushback. Because there's people that are concerned about, well, who's in charge, who's looking at this, what are the financial implications? So like I said from the outset, I need to let people know that I am not an official NTS spokesperson. I am working for NTS. These views will be my own from what I've seen. I was actually out yesterday with a police force on a multi-agency operation yesterday, and that's how I've discovered stuff. I've not sat behind a computer and looked at it from afar. I've actually gone out around the country and seen what's out there to get a sort of drawn a general picture. So that's where I'll be coming from.
Spencer, thank you very much. Steve Callaghan from Road Safety Support, you're welcome. Tell us a bit about your background and the relevance to this.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my background's in engineering. I'm about 50 years in engineering now, but the last 23 have been specifically involved in road traffic enforcement, type approval of speed cameras, and providing a link between the Home Office, the police, and manufacturers in the approval systems. Road Safety Support that I work for now, we have police members, and we provide sort of legal and technical support in road traffic prosecutions around the police forces in England and Wales and Northern Ireland. We sometimes help up in Scotland when they need it. From my part of it, we kind of see across many police forces and the various sort of levels of activity in these areas, and that goes from the police areas that have never heard of ghost plates to the police areas that are very, very active in the detection of it. We're also looking at industry and working with Tom because personally, I could see a technological solution for this that should be able to help the police and other enforcement agencies. I've got an engineering background, but it's been applied in the legal side now for 22 years, where I've done some forensic and legal study as well. And I find it as an engineer very frustrating that where you can apply active and very clever technical solutions are often frustrated by the law and the administration of it. So that we need to cut through that and get the appropriate offences dealt with here.
Thanks very much, Steve. And Laura Laker. Welcome, Laura. Just tell us a little bit about why you're here.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. So I am a journalist by trade, and I've been writing about transport, starting with cycling and walking really for over a decade now. And so I've come to the road safety space from a vulnerable road user point of view. Funnily enough, in my old neighborhood, there were a lot of problems with kind of vehicle modification. And I got to the point where I thought, well, what can I do about this as a resident? And I became quite interested in that. And it turns out there was very little. And I'm sure that some of that was due to number plate tampering. So there's a kind of a personal interest. And then this year I did my first parliamentary report, the APPG for walking and cycling. Did one on e-bikes, fake e-bikes, and the dangers around those, which was really, really interesting. And then I was invited to write this report, and I was part of the in-person inquiry while I sat in on that. And I was really, it was very, very eye-opening. The whole thing's been very eye-opening for me. It's been, it's really, really interesting how much is needed in terms of changing how we manage number plates and all of that. So it's been really interesting. But my kind of role in that was to bring together this very kind of shocking evidence, really, and to create a narrative that would then engage people and to understand, what's happening and what some of the solutions are. So.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody. Now, I tell you what, we've got lots to get through. If you please use the hands up function, presenters, because if don't sit there for a long time and not be spoken to or not get involved, I will try and make sure that there's a sort of a fair divvy up of the time that we've got. So let's crack on. Tom Duckham, how do ghost plates typically defeat current ANPR systems and what countermeasures are proving most effective?
Defeat mechanisms, there are various that we've found over the last few years. You get reflective or IR blocking coatings that go over the whole number plates. You get IR absorbent alphanumerics to actually make the plates up. The modified alphanumerics and their spacing can be an issue for some ANPRs. And simple obstructions such as a bit of mud conveniently placed on the number plate or a leaf or something that can block it. Going back to the days in the 90s, I do remember that the police did actually capture this motorcyclist who used to lie prone on his petrol tank, which allowed him to hook his feet around the number plates, and so that he avoided capture that way. But foolishly, he did it at 6 o'clock every morning. So one morning at 6 o'clock, they went and stopped him and managed to catch him. But so there's numerous ways. Countermeasures. I'm not going to go into too many of the secrets in a public domain because the wrong people might hear about what we're doing, and we'd like to keep that secret. But we're working on sort of multi-frequency blended illumination at camera sites, dual capture imaging, and some quite extensive computer vision analysis, or AI as some people call it.
Thanks, Tom. Let's go to Rob Laugharne then. Rob, how widespread is the problem of illegal or non-compliant plate supply in the UK today?
Thanks, James. Yeah, it largely depends who you talk to, but I think everybody will agree it's much bigger than people are actually realising, and they're starting to now realise some of the problems. So I think in the APPG, there was a quote on the numbers of it could be as much as 1 in 15 cars can't be detected, can't be read for various reasons, and which Tom mentioned most of them. But some of it can be innocent, some of it could just be a dirty plate, as we know. But and then it ranges up to more deliberate things, which is coatings and IR defeating kind of digits and whatnot. But if you're looking at 1 in 15 with a car park the size we've got, you could be looking at over a couple of million cars driving around today that can't be detected, and some of that will be relatively innocent in terms of, you buy a used car, you don't realise that your plate can't be read. But the vast majority, unfortunately, these days is more deliberate. And it could be avoiding speeding tickets, parking charges, congestion zones, or something a lot more sinister, which unfortunately is prevalent as well.
Spencer Marsh, are you able to share any kind of recent intelligence trends in the illegal supply of ghost plates?
Yes and no. Obviously, I'm going to be guarded for the same reasons that Tom just said in terms of public forum. I was out very recently, at an airport. I won't name the airport. The police team that I went to see, as Steve and Tom have already alluded to, did not know what a ghost plate was, and this was the team that was in charge of airport enforcement. Once we got over that, we went out onto an approach road to the airport, which is basically, a national security infrastructure site. And as soon as I started pointing cars out to them, we were pulling cars in, and every single car we pulled in had a ghost plate. We came across the taxi issue because of the airport and drop-off and pick-up fees. That particular airport didn't have barriers; it just had camera only. So the taxi drivers were just driving through and not getting charged. It was a real eye-opener because the airport fund for the security and the airport group then became aware of how much revenue they were losing as well, as never mind the security issue. The problem is, if it's dealt with by a ticket, it's the £100 non-endorsable ticket. Very rarely will the police officers have the time to do an intelligence report on the back of that. They issue a ticket and move on. Sometimes the plates are seized, sometimes they weren't. And there is all sorts of issues about, well, who's actually looking at this? Who's going to do anything about it? So the intelligence-wise, it's very sketchy. When I started looking at this last year on the trading standards intel system, it was probably single figures, in all honesty. Once I started getting it known out there and making other trading standards officers aware, and places like Wolverhampton in particular that has a particular problem, I was finding that Wolverhampton were targeting their taxi drivers but not recording it as intelligence. So trying to get the figures was really hard. Trying to get buy-in from NTS was hard because all I was getting back was, it's just a Rochdale problem, it's just a Wolverhampton problem, until I started getting around the country. In terms of police intelligence, I do have access to a very large police database, and there is hardly any intelligence on there. It's not a crime, so it's not recorded as a crime report. And as I said, road traffic officers don't have the time to do the intelligence usually. I have asked where officers are concerned if they can put intel in so that it can start recording stats to try and get an idea of the problem. The other problem was that none of the officers were recording any plate manufacturer details. They were identifying the plate was a ghost plate, dealing with that. So from a trading standards point of view, we're trying to say, look, you cannot be selling illegal plates. That is a trading standards issue. Trying to do some enforcement is another issue. But intelligence-wise, it's very, very patchy. It is a complete postcode lottery. And it's all about time and resources. And in terms of which agency feels they should have the lead or not, as to whether they feel they should be taking part in this or not. So it's a difficult one to answer that one, honestly. But I have loads of anecdotal experiences of, like Steve said, some forces completely unaware. Other forces, some people are aware, but they still sort of feel it's the DVLA problem. And then it just gets passed around the circle. So I'll say enough on that.
Steve Callaghan, just talk about those trials that you were involved with West Yorkshire, Greater Manchester Police, and some Welsh forces as well. What lessons from those regional early trials and what stands out as best practice that might still be helpful today?
I think the first involvement we got with it was from a police force in the northwest, where it was essentially being done by a traffic officer, almost as an additional, almost as a hobby within his traffic enforcement duties. He created his own cameras to be able to illuminate and detect systems. But when he applied for funds to buy proper cameras, the PCC refused it because they didn't see it as a problem, unfortunately. So when we actually bought a camera and loaned it out to West Yorkshire, just as a demonstration to show that these things could be detected on a handheld camera. But that is very manpower intensive, and it's not an efficient way to do it. The best way to do it would be to use some sort of automatic system. However, the display of registration plates regulations are quite clear that the offence is quite simple in terms of the display of the registration plate, but the fine is quite low. So in police forces that have used this sort of equipment on a manpower intensive basis, they do get good results, but they find that the low level of fine, I think it's £100 fine from memory, is not really a deterrent as far as the punishment is concerned. There are other offences that may be available, but they're somewhat more difficult to prosecute, such as forgery and fraud and that sort of thing. So there are offences that relate to this that need intent to deceive proven, but that can be implied. But it does take a significant effort to prove that, as far as the legal side is concerned. But once we see that the police can get results, they can quickly see how the problem is widespread, as others have said. They do take it up and continue with the enforcement. But as I say, the more serious offences need to be taken through the higher levels of court, Crown Court trial, perhaps. But there are massive losses of revenue. There is an intent to deceive. It's clearly a forgery, and it's a deception, and we should move away from the simple defeat of the camera in the registration, the display of registration offence, and move it to a more serious side. Also, we to get a measurement of the the proportion that Rob's alluded to. I think we need to look at automatic cameras in key strategic places to get a really good evidence of where this is occurring and the volume and the proportion, and get that confirmed.
Okay, thanks very much, Steve. Let me just bring Laura in. Had you even heard of ghost plates this time last year?
I'm not sure I had, actually. No, I mean, I wasn't aware. And I think, like a lot of people, even those working in road safety, and like we heard with a lot of police forces or trading standards organizations, it's just kind of, it's literally gone under the radar, I think. And which is why I think the report's really important, and the fact that people are talking about it. And hopefully raising the profile and doing something about it. Someone asked if anyone's got any images of what a ghost plate looks like presumably under an infrared camera. To the sort of, to you or I walking down the street, they just look like a normal registration plate, right? You've got 3D plates sometimes, and not all of them are ghost, but sometimes they're made of plastic that's basically see-through to an infrared camera. But Sarah Coombs was on Good Morning Britain on ITV on Monday, and they did have an infrared camera, actually, and they had a couple of plates, and one of them was a ghost. And they held the sort of TV camera behind the infrared camera, and you saw the plate just disappear, the registration plate. And but yeah, it is shocking. And I mean, the whole thing's been really eye-opening for me, and I hope eye-opening for anyone who's now encountering it through the news coverage and through the report. And yeah, I mean, just the fact there's 34,500 odd producers, and looking overseas, they've got one or two, and it's very closely regulated by the government. There's holograms or some sort of identifier that's hard to replicate by the layperson. But we don't have any of that here. And obviously the impact on victims of cloning. Jeremy Vine did a piece on his radio show on Monday, and lots of people called in. One taxi driver apparently kept being pulled over because her plate had been cloned, and someone was in the back seat, and they were just saying, she sort of pulled over very calmly and was just said, oh yeah, I'm not the cloner, I'm the original vehicle. And it's just happening so often on our roads, and I think it's really important that something's done about it, obviously.
Thank you, Laura. Rob Laugharne, what does a fit and proper regulatory framework for plate manufacturers look like, do you think, in your view? What's the gold standard?
It's an interesting question because it's a complicated one. James, before I've actually got an image. If you want me to share, I've got an image of ghost plates, what they look like through an IR camera. Do you think that would be useful just to flash up on screen?
I think so. Oh,
yeah. Oh, James, I think you're now muted.
Yeah,
I'm hoping everyone can see that. Obviously, it's a stealth plate, so it illustrates obviously what we're talking about here. So that the top plate, and I'll show you the original one in a minute when I stop sharing my screen, it looks like a normal number plate, and then you can see there's a combination here of some digits are transparent, some aren't, and then there's a full plate. There's the transparent. That's a still taken through an IR camera, so that gives just an indication. And as I said, to the naked eye, it's a normal number plate. So that's the ghost plate issue that we're highlighting today. But as others have alluded to, there's lots of issues. So in terms of what a fit and proper system looks like, it's really, there's two major ways you supply number plates throughout the world. They call it a centralized system or a decentralized. Centralized is very simple. It's government controlled. It's one or two people that are licensed to make finished number plates, and they issue all of the plates and they're traceable. We don't have that in the UK, and most of Western Europe don't have that. They have a decentralized system. So we most people then, when they picture license plate suppliers, they picture the people assembling the plates. And this is where you go on TikTok and you go on others and you see kind of bits and pieces. But ultimately what we're meant to be doing is supplying bits of reflective and bits of acrylic or 2 bits of number plates, and the ability for the assembler to manufacture that plate locally. As you can see, in order to do that, what we need is full traceability right from root source of the actual components and the materials themselves. We don't have that at the moment. So it's too easy to actually obtain illegitimate materials, or even non-reflective. You can buy vinyl, you can buy PET instead of the impact modified acrylic, and then you can make a number plate. You buy a printer from was going to say Curry's, I'm not sure they're around, but one of those sort of shops that you can buy prints and you can make them at home. It's far too easy. So what I do in a decentralized system is introduce dedicated materials which is a combination of overt and covert marking. So you have number plate dedicated components, and those markings allow you then to trace the full life cycle of the plate all the way onto the vehicle. The easiest one and the most obvious one is put a QR code somewhere. You can overlay it with a hologram and things that immediately there's a deterrent that it looks like a genuine plate, because you can combine that QR with a hologram or something else that's secured and controlled. But easily as well, you can tap that plate and you can have all the details of it, of where the root source of those materials came from, all the way through to where they've been used. It would clamp down on, unfortunately, this whole resale market we have, where people will get hold of materials and as soon as they leave my factory here, they effectively disappear, and quite literally, unfortunately, in front of some cameras, but you don't know where they end up, because it's, as you say, there's 35,000 registered suppliers out there. There's probably quite a few more unregistered ones as well, because they can get hold of materials quite easily off eBay, off Amazon. So yeah, the fit and proper system, I think, needs to be cradle to grave traceability of all the components in the system.
Let me bring Spencer Marsh in. Spencer, if you're able to give us some sort of insight into how National Trading Standard works with police forces, what's good, does good practice look like in that regard, and the DVLA as well, to disrupt the networks that we're looking at here?
Thorny subject, simply because I have worked with the DVLA, a registered number plate supplier enforcement team. When I say team, there's single figures in terms of people that are actually out there trying to look at the registered suppliers. And as you've said, there's 34,000 odd registered, but there's over 40,000 sites. If you have between 5 and 6 people to do that nationally, that's an impossible task for them. So I have been out with them physically on many, many visits to see what they encounter. A regional investigation team did a test purchase exercise at the beginning part of the year, where we went onto various social media platforms and purchased number plates without any checks or balances in terms of no V5 was requested, no identity was requested. It was just what do you want and how much is it costing. We put those together as evidence packages, and then we've been trying to go to the police and trading standards around the country, because we picked various suppliers from around the country, so it's not to be just one area, to say, right, here's a test purchase, it's evidenced, this is the plate, here's a witness statement from DVLA saying it's illegal, because there is brand infringement as well, in terms of, some plates are made to look like certain high-end brands and car logos that didn't have permission to do so. So you've got IPO infringement. We've had very little success in getting any of those evidential packages processed. So that's mostly been an intelligence gathering exercise. As part of that exercise, I did, and my team did intelligence background work on the people that we believe supplied those plates. And that was quite horrifying. And that's what I did bring to Parliament and made known. The pushback that I'm getting is obviously because you are identifying a flaw in a national system. And the pushback I'm getting is that, you shouldn't be talking about this because you're giving people ideas. And this is the issue that we've got, and that's from the policing world. So there is a lot of pushback from there, and even people being told you're not to talk about it with repercussions. So it's a difficult and thorny subject. And like I said, in some places you'll go to, there'll be some, okay, yes, we can help you there. In other places, that's not our problem. That's a DVLA problem. Why aren't DVLA prosecuting? Which is a whole other bag of spanners to unpack. So we are trying to work. And for me, it's turned mostly into an education thing. When I go out with the police, it's, are you aware of this? Do you want to know about this? Do you realize the implications? And once I show people, because I can talk about it till the cows come home, but once I actually show people, like Rob's just done, with an infrared camera that I've got, that I purchased off Amazon, and it's not expensive, then the penny drops, and a lot of officers can go out and see where it's coming from, but they then don't get buy-in from their senior officers because it's such a low-level offence. I try and sell the bigger picture. I constantly say, right, what if your organised crime group that's moving people, that might be involved in grooming, What if your terrorist suspects, your national security subjects are using these plates? Think about that. And that's where there's a continual battle at the moment to get this across. So in terms of trying, I can only advise. I cannot tell anybody to do anything, which is why I was at pains to say I'm just me talking personal view, not official spokesperson. But it's a battleground at the moment. First thing was the awareness, because you can't deal with it if people aren't aware of it. Secondly was it's not really an issue because there's not much intelligence on it. So it's not an issue. So it's that chicken and egg. You've got to make people aware to then look for it, to then capture it, to then raise it to see whether it's an issue or not. But I think the person on the street would clearly say, flipping heck, that's an issue. So that's pretty much what I'm going to say on it without getting myself into trouble again.
We don't want to do that. Thank you, Spencer. Let's think about some quick wins then, and then perhaps we'll look at longer term strategies and collaboration. But I'll come to you, Tom Duckham. How can industry innovation be accelerated then without, let's say, compromising accuracy or legality? How can you accelerate what you're doing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think essentially building on what we are currently doing with West Midlands. We've had a really good proactive pilot scheme with them in partnership with West Midlands Police, and we'd like to accelerate the pace of these pilot schemes in a controlled environment. So taking Operation Phantom to across other police forces, to rapidly test and validate and refine the new technologies in a live but governed environment, and this will sort of help speed up the feedback loop across all the different police forces across the UK. We need a streamlined approval process for cameras, and as Steve mentioned that he works on the Home Office type approved side of camera enforcement. Perhaps it can be built into that the scheme, and we need standardisation of regulation and reform so that we can reduce the number of legitimate plate variations an ANPR system has to process.
Steve, let's bring you in here then. Let's talk about training for officers involved in frontline detections and what needs to happen there. How can that evolve?
Yeah, I think as Spencer alluded to earlier with his camera, it's a fairly simple thing to train and demonstrate. And once you see it in action, and Rob displayed how the plates appear, it's very obvious when you get a plate. I was involved in the National ANPR sort of engineering forum up to about 3 years ago. And the ANPR sort of fraternity in the police are very secretive, necessarily so in some cases because it's an intelligence tool. But those systems can be altered with technologies like Tom's to actually highlight this problem and pass it through to enforcement. Unfortunately, the enforcement is very tedious at the moment. DVLA are the responsible agency for issuing number plates and their regulation. They're the sponsor for the law on that. But they require the police to take some action and report activity through to DVLA. I think it could be streamlined and DVLA should become the enforcement agency, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a police function. It doesn't prevent the police from enforcing, obviously. But when you look at DVLA, it's a very small team, as Spencer has evidenced. So it doesn't look as if it's being treated as a serious issue. I think it could be much more simplified as a regulatory matter, and more registration plates should be rescinded. Only 63 plates have been rescinded in the past 4 years by DVLA for misrepresentation of plates. Only 63. So that indicates that there's very little activity being taken to tackle it.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Rob, let's just think before we go, because there are quite a few comments and questions in the chat that I'll bring. We'll have a look at in a moment. a quick win. I've just like MOT stations and dealerships. They could do more to close compliance loopholes, couldn't they?
They absolutely could. I think they can certainly do more to help tidy up the problem, because obviously the good work that Tom and his team are doing are accelerating detection of plates that ordinarily or previously wouldn't be able to be read at all. What we need to do, obviously, is get those plates out of circulation. So they need to be replaced. They need to be replaced with plates that you can then trust. So you're going to a responsible, trusted manufacturer and supplier of those plates. And that's where the MOT stations and dealerships come in. Unfortunately, we've got a slight explosion of the online rogue sellers who are fueling this problem. The legitimate suppliers, the dealerships, the MOT stations, obviously ordinarily do the right thing, and they are regulated correctly as well. So we need to educate the public of, you need to be buying your plates from the right places, and that needs to be restricted down hugely. So we need to tidy up 34,000, as we say, registered, regardless of the unregistered, is far too many to police properly. And we know, we're not naive to know that some of those, a number of those, won't be doing things they should be doing as well either, because of the lack of background checks and whatnot as well. So we need to reduce those numbers to have half a chance of enforcing properly. But then educating the public of, if you are detected, yes, there's consequences for it, but then you rely on police discretion largely. Of and the police are very good at that, of detecting that someone has inadvertently abused the plate, and are more than happy to change it, and will change it as long as they get pointed in the right direction. Those that are doing it more sinisterly, we need the tools then to deal with them differently as well. But regardless, you're right. The MOT stations can introduce regular checks. They can be given the tools, the cameras to detect whether a plate is readable, and then they can replace it with a trusted one.
Thank you very much, Rob. Laura, you describe a wild west of number plate production and enforcement in the report. So what would you change right now today, if you could change one thing in the system that would make the biggest immediate difference?
I think, well, with the MOT, I mean, it is a good idea, but we did hear in the evidence that actually people are regularly changing their number plates. So there is also the possibility that someone can, even pulling into lay-bys outside of cities and changing their number plates. So you could just change your number plate before the MOT. So as we've heard, it needs to be a sort of broader response. But yeah, I think as we've heard today from multiple speakers, just reducing the number of producers right down, because people are even buying these plates not realizing that they're buying something that's non-compliant, because it might just be the cheapest material that the manufacturer can buy that happens to be invisible to an infrared camera. And so that needs controlling, increasing the fee, background checks. I mean, we heard that people with serious criminal records are producing plates of people, and a lot of them apparently aren't taking the documents that they're supposed to take to check that the vehicle, that who's buying them and all of this. But notionally, they're handling people's private data information, which they could then use for criminal purposes. So there needs to be proper background checks. And then also, as we've heard, cracking down on illegal use, making sure there's a real incentive for people not to, because you think about, if you're driving into a ULEZ or a congestion control zone, which are there for very good reasons, it doesn't take long for you to be able to save quite a lot of money with an illegal number plate. So there's a really strong incentive at the moment for people who do want to break the law and not pay their way on the roads to do so. And as we've heard, sort of tightening up the materials that are allowed to be used for registration plates. And we heard someone has asked in the questions about show plates. And at the moment, you can just buy any kind of plate. I know this is not one thing, but it's all kind of linked into how they're produced and how they're managed. You can just buy a registration plate of any alphanumerical combination, as long as you say that it's just for show use, which is amazing given this is a legal identifier. So I think it's it's not just one thing, but it's sort of controlling the whole kind of manufacture and use of plates.
Let's whiz through some of the questions. Becky Reynolds asks, do we also come across cases of number plate flipping? Just quick touch on that? Who could look at that for us? Who
Yeah.
could see that?
Yeah, I think it's more common on motorbikes. So I've heard. I'm not sure if so many people but it is. Yeah, I think among motorbikers, it's not uncommon.
I have had personal experience of it myself as a special constable in Dyfed Powers Police, because there was, I think it was coming up the A470, and there was a motorbike which had pulled in, and it had this kind of flippable plate, which it said, "Oh well, I only flip it when I'm on the track." And I thought, wonder how true that actually was. Okay, but moving on from there, there's Kerry Taylor Gorman. Is there a recommended approved camera or provider for mobile enforcement to identify ghost plates? Now we know from Steve that it doesn't need to be type approved, but how much are these systems, and how effective are they? Anyone want to comment there? Oh yeah, Tom.
Well, we do have a system that does recognise ghost plates, and what it does do is take a standard ANPR shot and put it against our ghost technology, if you like, so you can immediately identify that it is a ghost plate. And we don't. That technology is also built into our Home Office type approved system. So, but with the type approved systems, you won't know whether it's a ghost plate or not. It will just identify the vehicle itself. But we don't. The idea is that we rent these cameras out so you can understand the problem in your area. You don't need to put these things up for years and years and years to understand what issue you have, what level of non-conformity you have. So there's many ways that we can do it, and we've got cameras that are able to identify them.
Steve, your hand is up, please.
Yeah, it's just an idea. Tom says he rents these systems out. There's a large fleet of safety camera vehicles carrying out speed enforcement at the moment. There's no reason why the police can't temporary use of Tom's systems and rent them out and deploy them. So there's already platforms available for the police to put those sort of things out. Just an idea from Tom's explanation there.
Just reading through a few, from Paul Fletcher, self-regulation within the industry is obviously not working. There needs to be more government regarding laws. From Taz Seyfullah, it's a big issue in London. Flip and dip is what it's commonly known as, brackets locking into place to appear legal when stopped. From Adrian Cadd, Genoptic, different suppliers to read and identify the plates. Okay, let's start thinking about longer term things. We've talked about quick wins. Where do we need to be heading? Rob Laugharne, tell us, give us a strategic view of what we need to do and perhaps some ways of starting that journey.
I think it's reiterating what we've said. That there does need to be an overhaul of the regulations. So the actual there's a dual system for regulating number plates, as we know. There's the quality standard, the BS, which is being revised at the moment, and probably leading to banning of 3D or stuck on digits of any guise, and an improvement in the modification. But the quality controls of the product is okay. The product we've actually got quite a robust product. It's not too bad. The real problem with that is when you supply a number plate, you can self-certify that it conforms to that standard, which is just ludicrous. You should have to obviously externally certify with a credible test house that it works, because otherwise it doesn't. And part of the testing, so everyone's aware, is readability under IR conditions. So you need to do that. Now, the problem you then have is you take that constructed plate, you deconstruct it, and you send it out into the market and trust everybody else then to put it back together correctly, which they're not doing. And the problem we've got then is because there's far too many people to police doing it properly. So we need to change the regulation. We need to overhaul the RMPS registration system. My view, my personal view is we need to tear up that database and start again. You need to just get rid of everybody that's on it, get them to reapply with a higher barrier to entry, and a regular annualized check that people are still doing what they should be doing, and then submitting to audits, because that system will fund more enforcement from DVLA, who currently hold the enforcement responsibility, to get round fewer outlets that check that they're doing the right thing and you submit to the right audits. That should tidy up the problem. It won't eradicate it. We know that plate abuse has been around for a long time. So unfortunately, when you're encouraging criminality by increasing the prevalence of ANPR, you will always force people to be as creative as they can. But it should allow a much more regulated system, which will give us more trust back in the product. You then combine that with education of the public of what they should and shouldn't be doing, and where they should be getting plates, and what illegitimate plates look like. We've got half a chance, and the deterrence of obviously the consequences to the motorist of driving around with a plate that doesn't work. We've got a better chance of having a more reliable system, which is all what we're aiming for, really.
Rob, thank you. I'm going to make an offer from Project Edward, because this is a Project Edward event, that we will collaborate with all of you to create a 3-minute public awareness raising video for sharing free across wherever it needs to go in as many channels as possible. Let's talk about how that might happen as a specific output from this. I think I'm quite scared. This is we need to call for urgent government action. The APPGT is brands that the situation is rapidly escalating as a crisis. Abuse of number plates now has serious and far-reaching implications, as we've heard, not from routine traffic enforcement right through to counter-terrorism issues. It's a big thing. So any other kind of things that you would like to see? We've got a couple of minutes left. Let's just whiz round. Steve, briefly, what do we need to do? What one thing from you, a key action?
From me, I think, is to establish specific parts of the different acts that apply and produce standard operating procedures for the police and DVLA to take consistent prosecution functions up and down the country.
Thank you.
We're not having to recreate it in different areas.
Standard operating procedures. Good plan. Spencer Marsh, any one wish from you?
Just a couple of quick ones. The technology aspect for me, as soon as I heard this last year, was if the technology can detect these plates, you take away the marketplace. But I understand the cost implications. Every cop that I've spoken to who then understands the issue has said, why on earth can't we just have flat plates? Because if I say to the person I've stopped, your plate has to look like my plate on my police vehicle, that would make it simple. Retrospectively, you have to declutter the playing field. There's a load of taxis out there. There are taxi enforcement officers who should be inspecting their taxis to take that off the playing field. Wolverhampton, who have a huge number of taxi drivers, have said, if you want to be a taxi driver licensed to Wolverhampton, you must have a flat plate, no raised plates at all. Take it off the equation. Rob's already adhered to people are buying plates innocently and not realizing that they're made of dodgy materials. When those people are spoken to by the police, we're saying to them, complain to Citizens Advice so that trading standards then become aware of it, then go visit the dealers. But there's just too many of them. So we've got to declutter the playing field, flat plates, full stop. And DVLA have got to step up because, as you say, they said this was 20 years ago. Things have moved on rapidly in 20 years.
Thank you, Spencer. Laura, a last word from you?
So, I mean, one sort of looking at it in a broader way, which I think we're not always that good at in this country, is sort of taking the whole issue. And one of our 10 recommendations in the report was to establish a national task force on number plate compliance and to develop a national approach, because I think, we've had some great ideas which are going to be effective, but I do think the whole piece needs looking at properly to make sure that it's kind of future proof. There's lots of different ways of approaching, I guess, registration plates and how to manage things like road charging, which is coming. But I think being proactive in this space would do a lot.
Thank you, Laura. Rob Laugharne, last thoughts from you.
Well, really, last thoughts from me is to, as a member, reflecting the industry, is that we're here to help. Yeah, we're as concerned as anybody else of the integrity of the product is under threat. And we want to be part of that solution. I think that there isn't a silver bullet to these problems. There never has been and never will be. But we need to work better collaboratively with the DVLA, with trading standards, the police, with Redspeed, and all those we're detecting a problem. We now need to improve it and fix it. And that's a combination of solutions. But I think we've, as Spencer said, we've almost done the first bit, which is highlight that there is a problem and it's got momentum. We just now need to keep that up and actually get some regulatory change.
Thank you very much. And Tom Duckham, then, what partnerships do we need? What kind of initiatives need to happen, and what part can you play to get to a point where, you know, that situation where every vehicle on the UK roads is traceable and therefore accountable?
Well, I think we've got the technology there, but I thought you were going to ask me the one quick thing that we'd want to introduce, and given the time, I was going to be really quick and say £1,000 and 6 points. And I think that we just need to make the deterrent not worth displaying these plates.
Okay, that sounds good to me. As a quick win to get that straight in there. Look, thank you all very much indeed, Tom, Rob, Steve, Spencer, and Laura. Today's discussion highlights that tackling ghost number plates requires aligned innovation, consistent enforcement, and strong public messaging. Technology, policy, and awareness must converge to close the gaps exploited by criminals. Thanks to everybody. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your point in the chat. Really appreciate the input from our panelists and from members of the audience. I hope you found this useful. I think we'll be revisiting this. Look, practically speaking, we're going to get this video going. So before the end of the first quarter of 2026, we will report back with some action and development. So please watch for your emails and for when we meet again, and do join us for that. So thank you very much from Project Edward. If it's not too early to say, I hope you have a happy Christmas, and we will be in touch again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
James, cheers. Thank you. Bye.